So good afternoon. Well, it is the weekend edition of the Iftar Drive. My name is Zahid Jadwad, and I'm your host this afternoon, keeping you company all the way until Iftar time in Johannesburg, which is around 6 p.m. this evening. And so we will be together all the way up until then. In fact, just looking at your Iftar times in the major cities, in Durban, the time is at 17:49 p.m. And in Johannesburg, 6:04 p.m., Cape Town, 6:37 p.m. Of course, lots to come your way this afternoon. In fact, we do have a crossover that will come at around 5 p.m. It's a takeover by Al Baraka Bank. Of course, they are announcing the winner of two Umrah tickets. So that, of course, coming your way between 5 p.m. and 5:30 p.m. And you can tune in to catch that on our various platforms. Before that, though, of course, we do have the Palestine Watch, which is an installment of the Palestine Watch. It's a segment we've been hosting with Khalid Vawda from Social Intifada, thus Ramadan, where we were looking at a number of stories in Palestine and the developments there. Putting those stories under closer scrutiny, you could say. But of course, Brother Khalid Fada not available this afternoon to do a live interview, and so I did catch up with him this morning, and we did a recording of the interview, and so that's what we're going to jump in straight away in a few moments. And yeah, of course, you can connect with us during the show. 0617660355. That's the WhatsApp line. And you can find us on X at Salam Media. You can find us on Instagram at Salam Media _ on air. Right now, let's jump straight into that interview. Rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Shukran once again, Brother Khalid, for joining us. Um, I know this has been quite a busy week. In Palestine, at least, it's been quite a deadly week, as we know. And of course, Ramadan coming to an end, but no end in sight for the war of extermination that Israel has so far waged against the Palestinians. Um, of course, so I think then, Brother Khalid, shukran for joining us. A good point to start then would be Hamas is now sending a delegation to Egypt once again, and they're there once again for ceasefire talks. What can you tell us about this development?
Assalamu alaikum and assalamu alaikum to the listeners. So Hamas there's another round of talks that are meant to be taking place this weekend in Egypt. And it's unclear whether Israel's sending a delegation, but we do know that the Americans are sending the CIA head of the CIA, William Burns, and his Egyptian counterpart will obviously be present. The basis of the talks, again, is from the side of America and Israel, and probably Egypt as well, to put pressure on Hamas to return the captives that were taken October the 7th. This, obviously, from the side of Hamas, there are some key points which they're not going to budge on. They've made that very, very clear. The basis of any any ceasefire, number one, it has to be permanent. The prisoners have to be released. The people who've been displaced from Gaza have to be allowed to be returned to their homes, and all Israeli troops need to be scaled back from Gaza. So this is stuff that these are points that Hamas are not going to budge on. They've made that very, very clear. And on the other side, Israel obviously are now refusing. They've also refused this for a while. They said any request for Israeli troops to leave Gaza entirely, Netanyahu was quoted as saying that this is absurd. We know that Biden has been asking Sisi and Qatar to press Hamas for a deal. I think Biden's coming under pressure in the U.S. From people within the Congress. There's a lot of sentiment on the streets in the U.S. People want this to come to an end, and they realize what a big part the U.S. is playing in the genocide in Gaza. Israel, for its part as well, Netanyahu and his cabinet are also coming under increasing pressure, first and foremost from the families of those who are held captive. They've been clashes, there've been protests, they've been storming the Knesset, the Israeli Knesset. There's been massive protests in Tel Aviv over the last couple of days, with protesters clashing, police violently dispersing the clashes. So there's a lot riding on it now, and I think the US has been talking about they want to see a clear plan from Israel about Rafah. Israel has yet to present a clear plan. But the fact that Israel continues to kill people all the while throughout these talks taking place renders anything that
I
they say
just want to take a
meaningless.
moment to reflect on another event in history. And it wasn't that long ago. It was, in fact, the Vietnam War, where the US was hell bent on fighting what it deemed to be communism in Vietnam. Of course, that was in the 20th century. But at the same time, then, especially in the wake of the My Lai massacre in that war, there was a swell of opposition on the streets, especially in the United States. People were not happy with what was happening, and we're seeing similar things unfold in Israel, where people are now upset with what is with the way I wouldn't say they are upset with the fact that Israel is waging war against Hamas, but of course they are upset with the way it's being done, and especially concerning the hostages or the captives, we should say. And then, of course, there is quite a bit of opposition in the United States. We saw the Iftaar dinner of the White House was boycotted. And then we're seeing the World Central Kitchen. That incident really sparked outrage, I would say. Are you seeing any links between, any parallels or correlations between the way these two events are unfolding?
Well, any unjust aggression, military aggression on an innocent people, as much as you'd like to cover it up or sugarcoat it with whatever campaigns, eventually people will see through that. Vietnam was different because there wasn't the access to the media that we have now. And with social media and stuff that we're seeing on the ground every day, this is happening much quicker because people are seeing the carnage in real time. They're seeing the genocide in real time, and it's gross. It's disgusting. It's absolutely inhumane. It's barbaric. The words don't describe what they've been doing and what they continue to do. So, because people are seeing it in real time, it's speeding up the opposition to this. Because no human being, irrespective of religious affiliation or political affiliation or any other affiliation, any decent human being would not be able to withstand this massacre of people, over 30,000, 32,000 people,
And then
and
looking,
just
of
sit
course, at the
silent.
movement in the United States itself, we saw this week a group of progressive members of the Congress urging the current administration to halt the transfer of weapons to Israel. And among those is former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
That came as a bit of a surprise because Nancy Pelosi she's in fact addressed the Knesset a few years ago. So she is, if you want to find somebody that's pro-Israel, she's a poster girl for the Israeli government. There was a letter by 3 representatives of the Democratic Party calling for a halt of military aid to Israel, which was signed by another 37 signatories. And this was after the Israelis released some findings of its investigation into the attack on the members of the World Central Kitchen, the attack that killed 7 people last week. So they're not too happy about this, and they want to call for the US to halt military funding to Israel. So Pelosi's office also joined in on this because according to them, she's sympathetic to some of the thoughts in the letter, and they are calling for a comprehensive and an independent investigation into the killing of the members of the World Central Kitchen, the volunteers there. But again, we take this with a pinch of salt because, like I said, Nancy Pelosi's support for occupation Israel is very clear. So, and Israel does not know the meaning of independent investigations. When they were pressed for this in an interview with British media during the week, the spokesman obviously saying that we'll push for a full-scale independent investigation. And when the journalist pressed him about who the independent investigation would be carried out by, ultimately it came back to the point of these people would be appointed by Israel and it would be pretty much internal. So they say things as part of the Hasbara and smokescreen, but in fact we know there is no such thing as an independent investigation in any of the activities of the Israeli
just
occupation
for a
forces.
moment, if you could perhaps elaborate on the significance of this attack on the World Central Kitchen. It had caused a number of aid agencies to suspend their operations in Gaza, where we know famine is looming, where we know people are starving, and just this making the situation even worse. But also on an international scale, we know that those who were killed in these attacks were from countries such as Poland, countries such as Australia, and those countries are not very happy with what has happened, of course.
No, they're not. And the sad thing here is we're 6 months into this genocide. We've had more than 32,000 people killed brutally. We've had more than 70,000 injured, severe injuries. Gaza's been decimated. 60-70% of the buildings in Gaza have been destroyed. And a day after the killing of 7 foreign aid workers, whose names were splashed all over Western media, newspapers, front page news, it's taken the killing of 7 Westerners, and I'm sorry to use the term, but 7 white-skinned people to bring attention to a genocide that's been happening where over 32,000 people have been killed. So again, it goes to show the horrific hypocrisy that's being displayed by mainstream media and by those who run mainstream media and by people who control opinions in the West. This hypocrisy is glaring and it's completely unacceptable. So, even with those that were killed from the World Central Kitchen, very little mention was made of the driver who was Palestinian. But the focus was on, obviously, the foreigners that were killed. And more so, one of Israel's closest allies, the UK, the United Kingdom, 3 of those killed were from the United Kingdom. And if we just take this a step further, there's a lot of question marks being raised about the fact around the World Central Kitchen. Firstly, the 3 British men who were killed were former military personnel, and they are currently contracted to an independent, I say that in inverted commas, security company that provides risk management in various parts of the world to various clients, governments, corporate, etc. So it begs the question, were they actually working for the World Central Kitchen, or were they doing work on behalf of the US and Israel under the guise of the World Central Kitchen in Gaza? There's a lot of question marks. There's question marks about the World Central Kitchen as well, because if you listen to the interviews with Israeli officials, almost all of them are singing from the same hymn sheet in saying that the World Central Kitchen are the good guys. They are the good guys. They have been approved by Israel to do work in Gaza. Now, the World Central Kitchen has a close, very, very close relationship with the US regime. There's funding that it receives from the UAE, which is a very, very close ally of Israel and America in the region. The World Central Kitchen is being touted as an alternative to UNRWA, because we know for a few years now, Israel has been trying to dismantle UNRWA and replace it with somebody that they would be more happy with. So the World Central Kitchen, they want them to fill that role. When you dig deep into the World Central Kitchen, the head of the organization, Jose Andre, rose to prominence with a string of successful restaurants. He's a celebrity chef, close ties with Barack Obama, close ties with Joe Biden. So he's quite close to the U.S. administration. And they had basically the green light from Israel to be able to operate in Gaza. So could it be that on the one hand, while they're giving out food, on the other hand, they're taking information and they're providing information to authorities on the outside? So there's a lot more that needs to be unpacked and spoken about with the role of the World Central Kitchen. But to bring it back to what we started speaking about, the glaring hypocrisy of the West and Western media. 7 white-skinned people have been killed by Israeli military strikes, 4 strikes, 3 or 4 successive strikes, not just one, so not a mistake by all accounts. And that's splashed all over Western media, whereas more than 32,000 have been killed in Gaza.
And I think
Western
that's
media
what it
hardly
comes
bats an
down to.
eyelid.
I mean, or among the things that it comes down to, and something we definitely need to highlight, is the fact that it, as you mentioned, it took 7 white-skinned people to be killed for anyone to really pay attention. Whereas we are now, in fact, today marks 6 months into this war of extermination, more than 30,000 people killed. And that's what it took for attention to be trained on this corner of the globe.
The people of Palestine need your support now. Africa Muslims Agency is on the ground, already providing food, medication, and emergency supplies in Gaza. Donate any amount to Heal Palestine at africamuslimsagency.co.za. Africa Muslims Agency, empowering, educating, inspiring.
Shimmer, sparkle, captivate. Nothing less than a masterpiece. Droplets of gold inspires precious design. Platinum bursts with intricate freshness. And every pure diamond becomes more than just a girl's best friend. Vawda Gold Gem Jewelers, where timeless dreams become a reality. Come to us. We tailor-make designer gold, platinum, and diamond jewelry. Trade in or remodel your old gold. Clad yourself with classy name-branded watches. We offer insurance valuation and free zakat calculation. Visit us at 534 Ridge Road, Overport, or call 031 208 9142. Vawda Gold Gem Jewelers, manufacturers of fine gold and diamond jewelry.
Are you looking for a cross-border road transport company that is committed in achieving high safety standards, who is fast and efficient, and also excellent customer service? Gardi Global specializes in cross-border transport from South Africa to Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Malawi. Gardi Global, situated at 10 Daniel Road, Benrose, Johannesburg. For inquiries, contact our trained staff on 011 614 3108 or email info@gardiglobal.co.za. Safe long haul into Africa is our business. Gardi Global Transport.
This Ramadan, join the Al Imdad Foundation as we spread the winds of generosity in 40 countries across the globe. Sponsor a food hamper for 800 Rand and ensure a fasting family has food to break their fast. Donate your zakat or lila and ease the pangs of hunger experienced by thousands of widows, orphans, and destitute Muslims globally. Donate online at alimdad.com or call 0861 786 243 for more information.
Salam Media, your spiritual companion this Ramadan.
And then
I think it's important to just also mention that the condemnation of the killing of the workers at the World Central Kitchen, correctly so, is quite vociferous at the moment, and it should be. There is minimal mention of what's going on in Gaza. So the focus is just on those 7 who've been killed. And everything else has been sidestepped. Even while this is continuing, the focus of the West is purely on those 7 not
And
the
as you mentioned, it's
32,000
on these
plus that have
7
been killed.
volunteers and the Palestinian driver not really being mentioned in the coverage of this incident. And then finally, Brother Khalid, the US preparing for an attack from Iran on US or Israeli assets in the region.
So this follows the Israeli airstrike on the Iranian embassy in Syria in the week. And according to Western media outlets, the US is on high alert for its interests in the region. Israel are saying that this is going to be inevitable, that Iran is going to respond. There was a call that took place between Biden and Netanyahu earlier this week on Thursday, and this was one of the key points that was discussed. Iran, through its media outlets, has vowed retaliation for the 7 officials who were killed in this attack by Israel. Whether this happens or whether it doesn't happen is something that only time will tell. There are obviously people who want to see escalation in the region. It would serve certain people's interests, certain governments' interests. The US, for its part, cannot get involved in a regional war. They do not have they will not have the support of the people in their country. It's going to go against the people in the US are tired of war. That was very clear when the last of their troops left Afghanistan in a humiliating defeat after a 20-year occupation. The people in America do not want a war. They do not want their sons and daughters being put on the ground, especially in this instance, for somebody else, for Israel. The groundswell and the support that's growing for Palestine and opposing Israeli hegemony in the region, the support's been growing within the United States, within a lot of the Gen Z population, and growingly among some of the older population as well. Those who are ardent supporters of Israel will remain so. But the blowback that's come out of this is something that Israel or the United States were not expecting at all. So they are not in favor of any military intervention, especially on behalf of somebody else, because as far as they're concerned, the United States was not attacked. The United States even somewhat apologetically mentioned to Israel that this was done without their knowledge, this missile strike that was carried out. They did not have any knowledge about it, and they kind of warned Iran not to escalate the situation and not to target U.S. interests in the region. Iran, for its part, cannot get involved in a war with 2 other countries. Despite having the military capability, they've got tons of missiles. Financially, they cannot sustain a war. So this doesn't suit anybody's interest, especially the U.S. and Iran. It could work in Netanyahu's favor and his party's favor, because attention could then be deflected away from the massacre and the genocide taking place in Gaza. Whether the US and Iran are ready to go toe-to-toe, I don't think this is going to happen. Then this places Iran in a difficult situation as well, because they have promised to retaliate. Now, do they go ahead or don't they go ahead? And if they do, what are the repercussions for possible regional
I'm sure many
confrontation?
will be keeping an eye on those developments. Brother Khalid, this was our final installment for Palestine Watch this Ramadan. And that means, of course, it is the last time we'll be chatting, at least for the month of Ramadan, about the developments in Palestine. And hopefully we will connect with you at other points throughout the year as things unfold. Just finally, then, I think we'll leave it at this, is on the 7th of October, or somewhere around I think it was within a week since the events of the 7th of October, my colleague Inayat Wadi had hosted a panel discussion, and one of the panelists said something interesting where she said it felt almost as if this felt just like where South Africa was on the eve of 1994. It felt almost as if the time of reckoning had come for Israel, similar to the way it had come for South Africa just before 1994. Would you agree with this sentiment?
I would agree with that, but from a different perspective, though. So from Quranic teachings, we understand, firstly, every nation has an appointed term. Allah has mentioned that very clearly in the Quran. So this illegal state of Israel has an appointed term. It will come to an end because Allah has said so. Secondly, one of the signs we look out for, and we look at past nations because Quran instructs us to look at narratives from the Quran in order to be able to learn and take these things forward. Past nations have been destroyed. One of the key elements, one of the key characteristics that they displayed was arrogance, absolute arrogance and impunity. The arrogance that Israel is displaying, if you just jump back to, for example, the story of Fir'aun, Fir'aun's arrogance reached a height that none before him had ever reached, and basically he likened himself to Allah, and that was just before his end, which nobody foresaw. The children of Israel didn't see this. The Bani Israel didn't expect this. They were in bondage. The people of Egypt didn't expect this because of the power that he wielded over them. However, within a short space of time, Fir'aun and his entire army were destroyed. What we're seeing now, just even before the 7th of October, so if we just rewind quickly to the 7th of October, when the operation took place by Hamas did not, according to a few accounts and well-placed accounts, Hamas did not expect the Israeli security apparatus to fold this easily. They expected more personnel at those military posts, and they expected a fight. That's what Hamas were preparing for. The fact that they didn't get this fight, we know that just prior to this, not long before this, Israel had redeployed a number of their military personnel to the West Bank to support the aggression of the settlers against Palestinians. So they redeployed under the impression that there's nothing's happening in Gaza. We don't have to worry. We've got Gaza under control, basically, and we can redeploy our troops here to the West Bank because we've got aggressive plans here in the West Bank. So that was one of the first points of arrogance on their part. And the fact that they're going about this genocide in the way they are. So, for example, last week, within a day or two, the workers in the World Central Kitchen were killed. They took the decision to ban Al Jazeera. They've made that decision. They bombed an Iranian embassy in Syria. They're just going about this with complete impunity. And America has a very limited kind of a support that they can give to Israel because they cannot continue. If America continues, this is going to drag America into something that they're not going to recover from. Already they're finding themselves in a very, very difficult place. And we know that without American support, Israel would not stand for a day. The Israeli state would not stand for a day against the resistance and against the people of Palestine who want to reclaim the land and the justice that's due to them. So for me, it's the sheer arrogance and the impunity that we are seeing from them, which signals the demise of a nation or of a group of people. And this is becoming more and more apparent if you listen to Israeli military statements, if you listen to statements from top officials, if you listen to some of their talk shows. We get snippets of those translated into English. It's just pure arrogance. There's a complete disregard for the people of Palestine. They're not viewed as humans. They're not viewed on the same level playing field. They're not viewed as equals. And this can only last for so long because this is the height of arrogance. And if you believe that the people are there to serve you and you can do whatever you want with them, you can subject them to an occupation, a brutal occupation, you can kill their children, you can kill parents in front of their children, and you expect those children not to come back for you when they grow up. There is no bigger arrogance than this. The Israeli occupation forces have been filming themselves doing all sorts of horrendous things, disgusting things, and being broadcasters all over TikTok. They've just completely disregarded what the UN has said, number of resolutions. They've completely disregarded what the ICJ has asked them to do. So they're acting as a law unto themselves. And this for me is imminent. When it will happen, Allah knows best. But I firmly believe that this is the beginning of the end for
of
them.
course, we'll leave
Inshallah.
it at that. Of course, in Palestine, Eid is coming up soon, and it's just going to be business as usual for the Israelis, from what it seems like. And of course, that means no rest for the Palestinians. But we make dua that their situation changes, and soon enough, inshallah. But Brother Khalid, shukran so much for your time. You go well and stay safe. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Jazakallah khair.
Khalid Vawda from Social Intifada. We chatted about a range of things happening in Palestine this week, and the implications of those developments. And that, of course, was the final installment of this segment, as Ramadan also comes to an end shortly. Let's take a break right now, and I won't be back exactly after 5 p.m. I'll be back shortly after 5:30 this afternoon, and that is because Shahista Token from Al Baraka Bank is going to be taking over. They are going to be announcing the winners of 2 Umrah tickets, so that's coming up shortly after this break.